So, good Freilich Hanukkah to everyone. We're in the middle of actually the beginning of chapter 40, Perek Mem. Mem is very, very important. Ben Arbaim Lebina, at 40, one attains Bina, which is more than wisdom, it's expertise, right? A maven. So we are at chapter 40 in Tanya. And this is the last of the 5 chapters which discusses the importance of kavanah, intent and focus when doing a mitzvah. The Baal Tanya Alter Rebbe, in his treatise of Tanya, teaches us that every yid has the potential to be perfect in thought, speech, and action. Perfect meaning not to speak what you're not supposed to, not to think, to divert your thinking for what you're not supposed to think about, and of course to do only what you should do and not do what you shouldn't do. And in that area, one has the capability to become a Beinani. He began in 35 saying that what's most important is the deed. And he quotes the Zohar HaKodesh, the Yenuka, Mais Uvdin Tovan. However, in chapter 37, middle of 37, through this chapter, he's still on the trajectory of explaining that if you don't have Ava and Yira, okay, so in Chabad Hasidus, we use the words, more than Kavanah, we use the words Ava and Yira. If you don't have love for Hashem and awe for Hashem, and when you do a mitzvah, the mitzvah is done, and you get credit for the mitzvah, which is the most important thing, but it's lacking wings to soar on high. And in the mystical writings of Judaism, it is explained how important it is for a mitzvah to soar on high to the right place. Now, I want for a moment, before we learn in the text, to explain this, because if you think about it, like, why is this relevant to us? We don't know what the world, Atzilus and Bria and Yetzira and Sviros, it's all words, and we try to understand as much as we can. But what does it have to do with our practical day-to-day living? And if the Alter Rebbe put it into Tanya, that means somehow it is relevant, Yaini, to our day-to-day life. So Bekitzer, the answer is, or one of the answers, one of the explanations is that if you're lacking inspiration, eventually the deed will be, at best, dry, old, and stale. And worst, you'll stop doing the deed. And this has been shown over and over. It's not rocket science. It's a davar haposhut for every young man and woman and every child, that if you're not inspired, it doesn't go anywhere. The Ava and Yira is the inspiration. So it's crucial to have Ava and Yira for the Beinani, for the potential individual to perfect himself or herself to the point of doing what Hashem wants in every way. It's a requirement to have Ava and Yira. And that's why the Zohar says that when you're lacking Ava Yira, Hashem, it doesn't soar on high. Now, whether it goes to this level or that level, that you could say is semantics. And Alter Rebbe talks about it here because he gives you a full prescription. He doesn't give you a half-baked prescription. He tells you, if you develop your love and fear for God using your intellect, it ascends to Bria, the world of creation. If you only do it through your hidden, innate love called Ava Musuteres, it ascends to the world of Yetzira. And then you're sharing something with angels, but only with angels, and you're a soul, and a soul can transcend more than an angel. Those points are kind of on a side point to the overall message. So therefore, I'm saying this before we begin learning. I want you not to get lost, because there's a lot of kind of side notes here, and how do you reconcile this with this, and what do you say about this, and is it Bria, is it Yetzira, Malachim? Those are all side points to clarify the main point. What is his main point? That you need to have Ava and Yira for the mitzvahs to soar on high. And this explains something that we all ask ourselves. Hashem says in the Torah, in B'chukoisai Telechu, if you do my Torah and mitzvahs, you will be blessed with rain, and the Baal Shem Tov teaches with Gashmias. God will pay you back. So here I made a sacrifice. I gave up the hamburgers and the treif and not keeping Shabbos, and I became a Baal Teshuvah. And if I was already from, I became really serious about it, and it's not a joke anymore, right? So where's my payback? And I'm struggling with Parnasa, and there's a war, and there's death, on and on. So the answer that the Alter Rebbe, would say, if we extrapolate from these chapters in Tanya, the answer is sometimes your Torah mitzvahs, Yoni, soars to a certain point and not higher, and for you to get this particular benefit or reward, you need to have the Torah mitzvahs going to the right place. And this is an important point, because say you're healthy, Baruch Hashem, we're healthy, and say we have a struggling with Parnasa, or say someone else is not struggling with Parnasa, but struggling with children, health of children, Judaism of children, having children. So what's a possible reason? I'm putting on tefillin in the morning, I'm keeping Shabbos, I'm going to a shir, I'm giving tzedakah. The answer is it could quite well be that in a certain mitzvah there you're lacking Ava and Yira. So it's going up, but it's not going up to the right chamber in the right place. So for what you need now, you need a soul, a neshama, to give the answer, not an angel. And your mitzvahs are only ascending to the level of angels. That's why this is important. It's important on its own, but I'm saying, even if you want to kind of say, show it to me cash in the bank, give it to me, bottom line, don't tell me about all these angels and levels and spheres and chambers. So what I'm saying is, I'm giving it to you that way. We do not know where this particular mitzvah has to go to, and where, when it enters this particular level and chamber, will it bring the bracha begashmis in physical world. So the Alter Rebbe says, the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that your Torah and mitzvahs does ascend to God. What if it doesn't ascend to God, which we call the spheros? It just ascends to the worlds, the olamos. It's an ascension, but it's not the right ascension necessarily for you. And therefore, as far as the bank is concerned, the deposit was not made yet. So you'll ask, if so, I have to be perfect? And I don't know. These are spiritual realities. How do I know? First of all, when you learn Chassidus, when you learn Kabbalah and you learn Chassidus, it tells you, the Alter Rebbe in Chabad Chassidus is placing, these chapters, he's actually placing where this job, what this job accomplishes and what this job accomplishes. So if Isser, your feelings to Hashem on this particular mitzvah was generated because you meditated and you understood and you developed a feeling of love or awe for Hashem in that particular situation, he tells you that your mitzvah goes to Bria, the world of souls. And the world of souls has its impact. What if you only do the Torah mitzvahs? In this particular mitzvah, you put on tefillin, but you didn't meditate, you didn't contemplate, you don't have time, you don't have patience, you don't have the information, but you do it, and when you put them on, you feel great. Right? A soldier on the field, when a Chabadnik comes there or someone else comes there, puts on tefillin with them, and they feel elated, they're going out to fight the enemy, and they feel, I did a mitzvah, I'm walking in to destroy the enemy with the mitzvah. That's not an intellectual generated feeling, that's an emotional generated feeling. Where does that ascend to? The world of angels. No, so that's good. You have an angel walking with you. An angel protects you. Fine. So that's why it's good for that. So these are the details of the overall issue, why it's important to know what happens. But the bottom line is, after everything's said and done, Torah mitzvahs require inspiration, i.e. ava and yira, i.e. kavanah. Let's continue now inside chapter 40, Perek Mem. The last chapter, the Alter Rebbe brought this Chazal that if you learn Torah, stam, without learning it for the sake of Hashem, that it's His Torah, and simultaneously not learning it not lishma, to become a rabbi and an orator and a preacher and to make money off it, which is considered sheloi lishma, but you're just learning stam azoi, or just learning. So the Alter Rebbe says, "Ein limudei oila afila biyutzviras hamiras b'olam hatziyah v'asira." This type of learning does not ascend even in the 10 spheres of the world of formation of Yetzirah and the world of action. Why? Ki ha-spheres, because the 10 spheres, hein p'chinas elikus, they are by definition godliness. Uvehem mislabish u'misyachet oirin baruch hu mamish, and Hashem invests Himself and binds Himself, the infinite God, in actuality, in the 10 spheres. And when you do something without love, fear, and love, la yochel l'salka u'lemekam kodem Hashem. It says in Tikkun Zayar, it cannot ascend l'salka v'lemekam, and to stand kodem Hashem before God. That's the rule. That's the rule. You want it to be before Hashem, Yaini, Kodem Hashem, which means you want your Torah mitzvahs to get to the spheres, to godliness. You want it to have the godly energy. It requires Ava and Yira. Otherwise, rak, but I'm learning. Limudei oila, your learning ascends leicholais umadurin, to the chambers and rooms, which is considered the extraneous worlds, the superficial worlds. Shebehem oimdim hamalachim. There you have the angels. Now, angels aren't any small change, but compared to godliness, Moshe, to spheros, it's not comparable. Okay, it's not. So when you learn stam. Again, when you learn a piece of Torah stam, not lishma and not lishma, where does that Torah ascend to? That Torah ascends to the chamber of the angels. Because of Rabbi Chaim Dalfin, as Rabbi Chaim Vital, the prodigy student of the Arizal, writes in Shar Nevuah, Perek Beis, Shema Torah shalei b'kavona nivroim malochem b'elam haYetzirah. When you study Torah without the intent that it's God's Torah, but just you enjoy learning and you study a particular piece of Torah, so then you create angels in which world? B'olam haYetzirah. And he says, U'ma mitzvahs, and when you do mitzvahs b'lei kavana, without kavana, nivroyim malachim b'olam hasiyah, then you create angels, not in the world of formation, but in a lower world called malachim b'olam hasiyah. The Chol HaMalochim, and all angels, okay, just briefly, there is a disagreement amongst the Rambam and the Ramban and other philosophers and commentators of those at that time and even earlier. Does an angel have a body? The Ramban, with a nun at the end, Nachmanides, he argues that angels don't just have a soul, they have a body as well. But their body is so refined that we can't see their body. We call this also Chomer V'Tzura. Chomer means material, the body. V'Tzura means the form, the particular form it takes. The Alter Rebbe quotes here the Shita of the Ramban, of Nachmanides. V'chol HaMalochim, all angels, in Balei Chomer V'Tzura. They are Balei Chomer V'Tzura, right? They do have material and Substance and form, we call it in English. Substance and form. Why is he saying this? He's saying this to answer the question that was bothering him from the statement of the Rabbi Chaim Vital. For Rabbi Chaim Vital, it implies that even when you learn Torah and you do mitzvah shalei l'shma, there is an aliyah. And we said earlier, there is no aliyah. So the Alter Rebbe says, it's not a contradiction. The aliyah that I was talking about, that he was talking about, and what it says in the Zohar HaKadosh is about make him Kodem Hashem, to stand before God. To have God, in other words, do your Torah mitzvahs, ascend to God. He says, what it says in the Arizal, he's talking about to ascend to the level of angels, which is not God, and within angels, there's two degrees. The body of angels and the soul of angels. But neither is godliness. That's the reconciliation of what the Alter Rebbe says here. He doesn't explain it. It's very brief. V'chol ha'malachim in Balitz Choyme V'tzura is an answer, is the retort to the rhetorical question that the Alter Rebbe asks on himself from the Arizal. Continuing. Now all this is, sir, was when you study Torah Stam. However, Avo Chaim Zev, Avo Torah Shalei Lishmo, when you study Torah Shalei Lishmo, here you mamish. In actuality, keep going. L'yois Talmud Chacham. I want to be a great Talmud Chacham. Moshe, you hear that? That's called Torah Shalei Lishmo. You don't study Torah because you want to be a Talmud Chacham. You study Torah because it's God's Torah. Whether you will become a Talmud Chacham, you all makes no difference. If you have an agenda, I don't mean you, if we have an agenda that we study Torah to become a Talmud Chacham, that's called Shaloi Lishma. Okay? That's it. It's no difference than saying, I want to know a certain field, Menashe, so I can make business from it. So here you don't make business, but you get covered. They put you in the papers, and they stand up when you come into shul, and they give you shlishi. It's the same thing. It's the same shalei l'shma. So what about that? What?
What about if you study Torah because it's a commandment, it's a mitzvah?
That's
doing it because it's a mitzvah.
Okay, that's more refined and more pure, but even that's not the ultimate. Because that's doing it because it's a mitzvah. The ultimate l'shma is to do it because God said so, nothing else.
God said so, that's why I'm doing it. It's a command, so I follow the command of the commander.
Yeah, right. But you can emphasize, I'm doing it because I'm commanded. So as soon as you say I'm commanded, there is a reason. There's some kind of reason. There's even a greater level of Lishma, which is to study it because God said so, whether it's a reason, whether He commanded us or didn't command us, it's not relevant. It's not relevant. It's a good point you're making, Menashe, and there's a lot of discussion in Chassidus and the Rebbe's talks about it. But for our sake, he's not making that difference here. So let's say that that's the reason. Okay, I just wanted to, give you a full plate, an entire answer. So I'm letting you know that it's not the ultimate. The ultimate is not even doing it because you're commanded. As soon as you say you're commanded, there is a there is a reason. There is something still shalom lishma. I don't want to go into it now. Let's go on.
What about if you're doing it for Ahavas Hashem?
We said, yeah.
Any type of reason that has a string attached to it is a string attached to it. Don't do it do it because God said so. Whether it's because God commanded, like Menashe said, or like you said, because to love God, those are all reasons. There is a level that goes beyond reason, right? Your father and mother is your father and mother not because they gave you a pair of pants, and not because they gave you an education, because they're your father and mother. Finished. Nothing else. You came from them, that's it. The fact that there's kibud aveim and there's this and that, they're all reasons and important reasons, and it's definitely better than the superficial reasons. I want to be a great rabbi, I want to be a great scholar. And that's something, by the way, since I mentioned it, that's something that we're lacking today. We need to correct. The respect for parents, that whole idea is they're your parents, that's it. Don't give me any. They raised me, but this way, and they just did this way. All of that's reasons, and I'm not delegitimizing, problems parents raising kids and kids feeling it later. I understand, but never forget one that you came from your parents. You wouldn't be on earth. Now, some people say I'd rather not be on earth. That's that's another discussion. But obviously Hashem says, I want you to be on earth. I want you to be born to these parents. So therefore, this is it. Okay, let's go back to the text, please. So when you learn Torah Shalei L'Shmo, Eina Oile Klal L'Maila, look at those words. Moshe, look at those words. Menashe Eina Oile Klal L'Maila. They don't ascend at all, Klal, to heaven. When you learn for Shalei L'Shma, because you're making Torah into some kind of business or prestige, that Torah learning sits below and it doesn't ascend. Even just to the chambers of holy angels, Ela Nisheres Lamata, they remain below. B'olam Haz, in this physical world, Hagashmi, through Mother HaKlippus, which is the chamber of the Klippus. We're skipping the Hagah, the parentheses here. It's not a parentheses, a side remark. And he says, it says in the Zohar, the holy Zohar on the Posik, of Shir HaShirim, Shlomo Melech says, of Koheles, sorry, I think. Ma Yisrael le'odem b'chol ha'molei. What value, what advantage is there to man in all of his or her activity, sheyamoil, of which they exert themselves, tachas hashemesh, it's under the sun. Famous song, Ma Yisrael li'odom b'chol ha'molei, sheyamoil tachas hashemesh. What advantage is to working so hard if it remains under the sun? It don't go anywhere. And the Alter Rebbe says, turn the page, please, to 108. Even working within Torah, exerting yourself, Menashe, when you're learning to understand well what you're learning. If you do it for your own self-aggrandizement and preciousness and dearness, you want to get mileage out of it, it don't go anywhere. Where? Chazal say, lucky is the one who comes to heaven after their life. The Talmudi biyadai, and they bring a Talmud, Chaim Zev, they bring a Gemara with them. It doesn't mean you got to carry a Gemara into Talmud, so when you get buried, make sure they put a Gemara into your grave. No, it's not what it means. Someone learned, and after under 120, he comes Bolikan, he comes to heaven, the Talmudi biyadai, and his learning is with him. Pirush, look at the Alter Rebbe's interpretation of this Chazal. His learning did not remain below on earth, and he left to heaven. But when he goes into heaven, it goes along with him. Why? Because it already ascended to heaven. It's waiting for him. You understand? His learning during his lifetime didn't remain below on earth, but rather it ascended. So when he comes, he's greeted by his own learning. So imagine, after our lives, we'll come into heaven and what will face us, page chapter 40 in Tanya. And they'll say, you didn't understand it so well when Rabbi Dalfin taught it. Let me give you a better explanation. Let me try to explain it again. You didn't understand this piece of Gemara, this piece of Rambam, this Chumash. But why? That's because it ascended. When does it ascend, Hillel? When you learn L'Shma. Av Daraisa. This is a rhetorical question. The Af, and although we say, the same Zohar says, Daraisa v'kutchabrichu kulachad Torah and Hashem are all one, Shehu v'ritzoynei echad, God and His will are one. Stop. That's where the rhetorical question ends. What's the question? What are you telling me doesn't ascend? I'm learning Torah, and God and His Torah are one. So what do you want from me? Yeah, L'Shma, not L'Shma. I'm learning Torah. It's like what Nasha was asking me. I'm doing the mitzvah. What do you want? And says the Alter Rebbe, Harei, this is his retort, Harei. Kuchabrichu ilme malakol almin. We know that Hashem pervades all worlds, b'shava, equally. V'yavo pikein, nevertheless, eino elam eshavim b'maylosim. All worlds are not equal in their virtue. V'hashinui hu me'amakablim. And the difference is, from our perspective, the receivers, b'beis prinas, in two ways. Ho aleph, one, shel yoyne mekablim, that the supernal worlds and realities receive ha'ora yoyse gedola, a greater emanation like Kates Adam Fanaidim ma'atachtoinim, from the ones below. That's number one, period. V'hashenis, and number two, shemekablim beli levushim. Not only is it a quantitative difference, but it's a qualitative difference. That the mekablim, that the second difference is shemekablim, the heavenly hosts and everything else, they receive belil levushim u'masachim rabim, without garments and many covers, as there are below. Ve'elam haz, in this physical world, ve'elam hashafel is the lowest world. The base prinas, in two ways. Number one, on earth, quantitatively speaking, the amount of godliness present on earth has been contracted so much. I could say to the other end, meaning there's so little of godliness that's revealed here. And therefore, hu chumri, the physical world is corporeal, v'gashmi, and material. Now, as far as the quality is concerned, the little light that we do have, that we do get, is vested, is disguised in garments and in curtains. That's all spiritual, not physical. Until this little light is invested in what we call the translucent klipa, lahachiyas called varam amutorim, to enliven, to give life to all permissible matter, shabaylam haza, uvechlolam, and this generally includes as well hu nefesh achiyunis, the living soul, hamedaberes shabda adam, that speaks, that animates man shabda. But nevertheless, it comes from the klipa. When a Jew says words of Torah, learns words of Torah, and davens of praise, but there's no kavanah, even though he's saying holy words, and at that time, the klipa does not conceal what's going on. You can't compare the klipa's impact when someone is learning compared to when the person is speaking idle chatter, or the living soul within all other kosher animals, even though God is all over, nevertheless, God is concealed. He's the concealment of all concealments. And God is called, as we say, Kael Mistater, the God that hides. So this little energy that's been extended into the world is also concealed in many garments and veils. Mighty ones. Until it does conceal itself in the translucent klipa. Conversely, over there, the words of Torah and the words of the acts of mitzvahs are an embodiment of God. So in other words, Alter Rebbe is saying like this. His question was that everything is united with God, and Alter Rebbe's answer is, you're right, everything's united for God. But as far as we're concerned on earth, number one, we get a little amount of the observable kedusha because of the tzimtzumim, the contractions of God's infinity. Number two, even that we get is veiled in the world, right? In worldly matters, because the world is a world of materialism, corporeality. Nevertheless, conversely, Torah and mitzvahs, the letters themselves, the words themselves are holy. So this is an answer to his question. How is it that there's a difference between the learning Torah Shaloi Lishma and or learning Torah Stam? When you learn Torah Stam and your intent is not Lishma, your intent is not to make business out of it, pleasure, honor, anything else. So then the words themselves are in a realm of holiness. They're not yet Lishma. So remember I told you, we have three levels. We have Lishma, we have Stam, or plain, and we have Shalom Lishma. We have learning for the sake of God. We have the learning not for the sake of God. That's the other end, the other extreme. And then we have Stam. So the Alter Rebbe over here says that Shalom Lishma is the worst as far as it doesn't ascend anywhere. It's a problem. Nevertheless, the words of Torah and Tefillah have one thing going for themselves, that it's words of Torah and Tefillah. And that's why he said earlier, and I think he'll repeat it soon again, you can make it up, because the next time you sit and learn, you will learn Lishma, and guess what it does? It retroactively elevates the Torah that you learned Shaloi Lishma. It schleps it out from the domain of negativity, of klippa, and it brings it to the right place. It's very, very small. Okay, we'll stop here, and tomorrow we will continue from here, Mitzvah Hashem. So that's, please listen, some of you came in late. Please listen to the introduction that I gave to before we started learning the text, because I explained the connection of the previous chapters to what we learned today, and also why is the Alter Rebbe spending all this time here on these side notes, these sidebars, reconciling this piece of Zohar with this Arizal. How is this relevant to the Beinani? I explained that in the beginning of the chapter. Have a happy Hanukkah. See everyone tomorrow.
Yes. Not except for me, Rabbi Dalfin.
What?
Are you going to be in Borough Park next week?
Yes, I will. Mr. Sheb, look forward to seeing you.
Okay.
We'll talk after. Sei gesund. Bye. Gotta go.